Thing by Robin Klein. Pictures by Alison. Emily Forbes and her mother lived in a block of flats on the edge of a park. They lived in the top flat, and Mrs. McIlvray, the owner, lived in the bottom one. Pets weren't allowed in the flats. It was a very strict rule, which was very sad for Emily. Mrs. McIlvray always stared at Emily severely when they met on the stairs. She looked as though she suspected Emily of smuggling guinea pigs upstairs in her school dress pocket. Emily's mother was very understanding. She didn't say irritating things like, "Never mind, just pretend your 90 bag pup is a real one," or, "When you grow up, you can have a farm with lots of animals." She said, "I just don't know how you can bear it." "Emily, it's terrible. I just don't know how you can stand not having a pet," which made Emily feel noble and courageous. It wasn't easy to look pleasant or interested when other kids at school talked about their Labrador dog, or how he could fetch the morning paper, or their grey Persian cat, which let itself be worn as a neck scarf. A gift shop near her school had pet rocks with little magic plastic eyes glued to them, advertised for sale in the window. Having a rock for a pet seemed better than nothing at all. Emily didn't have 50 cents to buy one of the shop window rocks, so she started inspecting the ground wherever she went. Rocks weren't plentiful in that suburb, and the huge ones in the park opposite the flats had been placed there by a crane. Emily knew she wouldn't be able to get one of those up the stairs by herself. Then one day she found a beautiful rock. It wasn't anywhere special. The bulldozer working on the new sports oval near her school had come and scooped it up with a load of soil. Emily picked it up and rubbed it clean with the sleeve of her school jumper. The rock was a cosy, rounded shape and a gleaming, rich, dark brown. It was the colour of Vegemite in a new jar before anyone shoves a knife in it to spread their toast. Emily took it home and put it on the living room table and propped it up with a lemon squeezer because it was so smooth it tended to roll away. Mrs. McIlvray couldn't possibly complain about your keeping a rock for a pet, said Emily's mother. "What are you going to call it?" "I'll call it Thing," said Emily. "It's nice and short and easy to remember." She patted the rock good night and went to bed. Chapter 2. Mrs. Forbes, who was inclined to be vague about such matters, forgot to turn off the oil heater, and when they got up in the morning, the living room was like a sauna. "Oh, blah," said Emily, "the heat's cracked Thing." "Don't rocks crack as easily as that?" said her mother. "Let me look." She picked it up and found that there was a crack, like an opening zip fastener, and while she was looking, it zipped open even more. The rock quivered in her hands and made a peculiar slithering noise. Mrs. Forbes made a louder one and dropped it nervously on the carpet. Emily was more curious than alarmed, and she poked at the rock with the point of a HB pencil. Something inside tapped back. So she helpfully tugged the two sections of the rock shell apart. A creature wiggled out, uncoiled itself, and blinked at them. It was about a half a metre long and a most attractive shade of green, like a Granny Smith apple. "What on earth can it be?" asked Emily's mother. "I never saw anything like it before." "We did a project on dinosaurs at school," said Emily. "I think this could be a baby stegosaurus." Stegosauruses weren't as awful as those dinosaurs they have in horror movies, though. I think they are vegetarians. "Oh," said Mrs. Forbes, relieved. "You can give it that leftover coleslaw in the fridge then. Come along, Thing, said Emily, and the little stegosaurus followed her into the kitchen. He ate the coleslaw and 4 ripe bananas Mrs. Forbes was saving to use for banana custard, and half a carton of mango yogurt. While he was eating, he thumped his tail enthusiastically on the floor. If you keep him, you must tie newspapers around his tail to muffle the noise, said Mrs. Forbes. It's going to be difficult hiding him from Mrs. McIlvray. I think they grow to quite a large size, Emily. Still, I suppose you can deal with each problem as it comes up. Chapter 3. The first problem for Emily was the worry about Thing being left on his own while she was at school and her mother was at work. Luckily, she discovered that he liked television. While she was having her breakfast, she had the set switched on. Thing looked at it with great interest. Then he jumped up on the couch and pushed his little claws in and out of the cushions, making a contented purring noise. So Emily left the TV turned on, with the sound very low. When Emily came home from school, Thing was still on the couch watching TV. He seemed to have grown a little during the day. Emily fed him a bunch of silver beet, which she had bought at the greengrocer's on the way home. Mrs. Forbes phoned from where she worked, as she did every day, to make sure Emily had got home from school safely. That stegosaurus should really be getting some outdoor exercise, she said. I don't think dinosaurs just sat around watching TV in prehistoric times. You'll have to smuggle him out into the park, but don't let Mrs. McIlvray see you both. And make sure no one notices you in the park either, Emily. People can be very mean about animals being a nuisance. They're quite likely to whisk Thin off to a museum and put him in a glass box with a label. Thing seemed to understand the need for quiet, even though he was so young. He pattered softly around Emily down the stairs and curled up his tail so that it wouldn't bump from one step to the next. There weren't any people in the park, and Thing loved it there. He munched weeds and chased after autumn leaves and rolled over for Emily to tickle his tummy. Then he sat down in the park fountain and gargled. The only dangerous time was when a young man in a tracksuit went jogging by. He blinked and slowed down. Freeze! Emily said, and Thing froze. He looked just the same as the rocks in the fountain, only mossier, so the young man jogged on. When it was time to go back to the flat, Thing followed Emily obediently, and she got him upstairs without being seen. But soon there was a knock on the door, and Mrs. McIlvray stood outside looking indignant. You've gone and brought a St. Bernard dog in off the street, she said. The rule here, young lady, is no pets. We don't have a St. Bernard dog, Emily said truthfully. There are large, muddy footprints on the steps, and they lead right up to this door. Oh, they must be from my new plastic flippers, Emily said, not so truthfully. I was testing them out in the park fountain. I'm sorry. I'll wipe up the marks straight away. Kindly don't let it happen again, said Mrs. McIlvray. Emily didn't. She always took 2 pairs of old woolen socks and put them on Thing before she sneaked him back up the stairs after his daily 10 minutes in the park. Thing was really very little trouble. He spent all day watching television with the tip of his tail in his mouth at the exciting bits. He didn't even seem to mind what programs were on. He liked them all. Cartoons, classical music, concerts, the news, and weather forecasts, and even talks on gardening and cookery demonstrations. Chapter 4. At night, Thing slept in a soft bed Emily made from a rubber inner tube that she got from the corner garage and an old duffel coat she didn't wear anymore. Thing didn't care that it wasn't a nice, soggy, prehistoric marsh. Each night he circled once or twice, then settled down cosily, with his nose resting on the tip of his tail. As the weeks went by, Thing became more and more handsome. He had a double row of bony plates down his back, and Emily kept them beautifully polished with Brasso. He grew to about the size of a small rhinoceros, then stopped growing. Emily's mother was very relieved. Thing liked living at Emily's place and being taken for walks. He became even clever at freezing into various shapes when necessary. He could make himself look like an ornamental fence or a very large cactus on a nature strip. Emily was careful to take him for outings at times when there would be very few people out. The closet he came to being discovered The closest he came to being discovered was when they were out skateboarding early one Sunday morning. Thing had eaten his favourite breakfast of squash bananas with coconut cream and was feeling very frisky. Thing and Emily skated up and down the deserted shopping centre, making up obstacle courses. Thing was too large and too heavy to ride the skateboard, of course, but he liked batting it along with his nose while Emily balanced on it. A group of people from an adult landscape painting class arrived to sketch the buildings. Thing hurriedly froze into a free-form sculpture in front of the council library, and Emily sat protectively on his tail and pretended to be adjusting the wheels on the skateboard. "What an interesting sculpture," said the artists, poking at him and standing back with their heads on one side looking most intelligent. "How very modern and unusual. And what marvellous texture the sculpture has managed to achieve with fiberglass." Emily wished that they would go away. "It's not a free-form sculpture at all," said an elderly woman in a floral painting smock. "It's a young stegosaurus." But nobody believed her, and Thing tried to stay frozen for a long time, while the artist wandered over the empty shopping centre, practising how to sketch perspective. He was as stiff and creaky as a glacier by the time Emily was able to take him back to the flat. Luckily, there was an aerobics special on TV when they got home. While it was a little too strenuous for Thing to do himself, he usually enjoyed watching people jiggle around from inside his comfy tire bed. But today, even though it was a special double episode with lots of star jumps, he was still feeling a bit sorry for himself by the time it finished. Chapter 5. "Never mind," said Emily. "We'll have a nice little game of kick the carton the groceries came in. Your goal is the couch and mine's the kitchen door." Thing was very good at that game, and he loved it. He never cheated either, although he had a tail he could have used, and Emily didn't. This game turned out to be very exciting. With 5 goals each, they had forgot to be quiet. Emily's mother was out because she sometimes earned extra money at weekends driving taxis, so she wasn't there to remind them about Mrs. McIlvray. Soon there was an angry knock on the door. "Freeze, Thing," Emily said as he froze into the shape of a coffee table. Emily reluctantly opened the door. "I'm sorry about the noise, Mrs. McIlvray," she said. "I was practising ballet." Mrs. McIlvray looked past her into the living room, which had become rather disarranged during the game of kick the carton. "I thought ballet was supposed to be pretty and graceful and quiet," she said frostily. "And that is a very odd coffee table you have there. Made out of green concrete too. I don't think I can allow you to have concrete furniture in this flat. It might damage the floors." She came inside and peered critically at Thing, who had his head tucked under his stomach and his tail tucked under to meet it. "It's not even very well designed either," said Mrs. McIlvray. "I should have known. I collect antique furniture, and I am an expert about good design. What are all these odd flaps sticking out on the surface? Most illogical, if you ask me." She put on her